Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Hart here. Welp, New York City has just elected an actual communist mayor. His name is Zohran Mamdani.
I am Muslim. I am a democratic socialist. We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
Think about this statement. No problem too large for government to solve or too small for government to care about. What Mamdani is describing here is totalitarianism. He believes that government can solve every problem. He believes that no problem is too small in your life for the government to weigh in on. He wants the government to be micromanaging every aspect of your life. How would you like that? That's the opposite of freedom. Government is mostly the problem.
I think you all know that I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Under free market capitalism, we found that the best problem solvers are just free people, free individuals out there, thinking things up and innovating. Government doesn't generate ideas and innovations that improve life. All innovations come from individuals, entrepreneurs and geniuses like Thomas Edison, the Wright brothers, Alexander Graham Bell, Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and people like that. And then the government is funded by the private sector, by the wealth that's produced by the private sector. The government doesn't produce wealth, doesn't produce prosperity. Government's job is to be a neutral referee, to make sure that the rules are followed and to apply the laws equally without bias. This man, this Zohran Mamdani character, literally gets everything wrong. What he's describing here is the exact opposite of the American proposition.
We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
What he's described here is literally communist totalitarianism, as has been tried under Mao Zedong in China, under Stalin in Russia, and many other places. And this model has done nothing but spread poverty and misery wherever it's been tried. But this guy would know because he's never held a real job, not a job that entails responsibility. He's never had to work at all because he grew up in a wealthy family. We'll hear more about that in a bit.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one.
What he means here is he wants to dismantle capitalism and our economic system, an economic system that has lifted more people out of poverty than any other economic system in human history. This system called capitalism.
So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
Well, this certainly is a very different tone than the smiling and friendly Zohran Mamdani that we saw on the campaign trail.
You deserve better. You deserve to be able to raise your family here, to be safe, to travel where you need to, free of costs and worry. You deserve someone who works as hard as you do, who thinks about you every second of the day. That's the kind of mayor I promise to be. New York, will you accept this rose?
Mamdani was a great salesman during the campaign. He's always smiling and sounding so friendly. This is why he was the perfect Trojan horse candidate. Everything will be free. That's always the siren song of the communist. And they always sell communism with a smile before they take power. And as soon as Mamdani won the election, the friendly mask came off. Now we see the real Mamdani. Now we see the angry, vindictive Mamdani. Now he tells us what he's going to do to New York City's landlords. He says he's going to harass and torture them relentlessly. He says he's going to confiscate their buildings.
Starting on day 1, we will expand the city's special enforcement programs, doubling fines for hazardous violations and tripling them for conditions that are immediately dangerous. And when a really bad landlord, like this guy, refuses to fix it, the city's going to step in, make the repairs, and send them the bill. If that doesn't work, the city's taking over the building.
So obviously landlords, building owners across New York City will be selling their buildings as fast as they can and getting whatever they can get for their buildings. And what property developer is ever going to want to put up a building again in New York City? Developers, businesses, and wealthy people will be fleeing New York City as fast as they can for places like Florida, Texas, and Tennessee. Let's hear Mamdani's economic views.
What the purpose is about this entire project, it's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that. But making sure that we have candidates that both understand that and are willing to put that forward at every which moment that they have, at every which opportunity that they're given. We have to continue to elect more socialists, and we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production.
That's right, he's not just for some sort of soft Scandinavian-style squishy socialism. No, he's not for that. He's for hardcore communism, which is when the government seizes all the means of production, seizes private property, seizes businesses. That's called communism, and it was tried under Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong. But this is how radical Mamdani is. And Mamdani, before he was elected mayor, long before he was elected mayor, outright told us that he is for abolishing private property. He made no secret about this.
If there was any system that could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now.
He believes that every building in New York City is owned by the government of New York City. And if you're actually permitted to keep the building that you own in New York City, it will only be by the grace of the New York City government. In Mamdani's world, landlords and business owners are the enemy. But of course, it's landlords, property developers, and business owners that provide all the jobs, the housing, and the wealth that built New York City. And government could not exist without all the tax revenue supplied by wealthy people, by property developers, by businesses, by capitalism. Now, usually when you win an election, you're gracious to the other side. Usually you're happy. But Mamdani here, well, he sounds angry.
We will hold bad landlords to account because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants.
What this means is that landlords will be getting out of New York City as fast as possible and selling their properties if they can. The buildings will then fall into disrepair. And good luck finding developers who are willing to invest in New York City and build new residential buildings. So New York City will have an even worse housing shortage because it no longer makes financial or economic sense to be a landlord. That's what happens when you villainize landlords.
We will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to evade taxation and exploit tax breaks.
Well, good luck getting any federal money from President Trump after this treatment. As mayor of the biggest American city, it's generally a good idea to try to get along with the President of the United States, who controls a lot of money that could potentially go into New York City, that New York City needs. So let's just recap what we have seen over the last 2 months. Well, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, shot in the throat for his opinions, and for simply inviting discussion. Tens of thousands of Democrats then put up videos and posts celebrating his assassination. Top Democrats in Congress then justified his assassination, i.e. AOC and Ilhan Omar. A Democrat was elected Attorney General of Virginia after fantasizing in text messages about murdering Republicans and their children. And New York City just elected this outright communist as mayor, this fellow from Uganda who just became a U.S. citizen in 2018, who was a proud Islamist. And the campaign of this communist who was elected mayor of New York City was endorsed by many top Democrats in the country, including the Democrat governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, and the leading Democrat, the Democrat leader in the U.S. House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, among others. This video will focus specifically on what this means for America if America doesn't wake up quick.
We will stand alongside unions and expand labor protections because we know, just as Donald Trump does, that when working people have ironclad rights, the bosses who seek to extort them become very small indeed. New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants. tonight, led by an immigrant.
Well, yeah, legal immigrants. I'm all for legal immigrants, just not illegal aliens. Democrats always leave off that distinction. We're for legal migration, legal immigration, not illegal aliens pouring across our border and consuming free welfare benefits, free housing, free healthcare, free education, all at taxpayer expense, also getting $1,600 loaded onto their debit card every month. I'm very much against that.
So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us.
Wow, he sure is arrogant. Well, he is just 34 years old, never had a real job with any kind of responsibility. He'll learn soon, the hard way, when his stupid fantasyland ideas meet reality. Mamdani says he doesn't think billionaires should even exist.
You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country.
Should billionaires exist?
No.
Without billionaires, innovative new businesses would not be able to find investors for their ideas. Elon Musk, who arrived here from Africa with nothing, first arrived in Canada, then came here, well, without billionaires, he wouldn't have been able to find investors for his ideas. There'd be no Tesla or SpaceX. He wouldn't have been able to build his companies. And all these companies that we see traded every day on the stock market could never have started if there were no billionaires to invest in their startup phase, invest in the ideas of these entrepreneurs that started these businesses. You can't have a modern industrialized economy without billionaires, without capital. We would all be living in shacks and mud huts without a financial system, without a capitalist financial system, and without investors, without billionaires to invest in people's ideas. But this fool is an economics ignoramus. Well, New York City voted for this guy, so I guess it's a FAFO situation. F around and find out. So now the people of New York City, well, they're going to find out.
We have to continue to elect more socialists, and we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production.
Notice also how he works in the acronym BDS, which stands for Boycott, Divest, and Sanction Israel. This is a movement that wants to erase Israel from the map. He sides with the radical Islamists on this. He wants Israel gone. Mamdani has even boasted that, as mayor, he will have the Prime Minister of Israel arrested if he ever sets foot in New York City.
Would Mayor Mamdani welcome Benjamin Netanyahu to the city?
No. As mayor, New York City would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a city that our values are in line with international law. It's time that our actions are also.
Even though the US is not a signatory to the ICC?
No, it's time that we actually step up and make clear what we are willing to do to showcase the leadership that is sorely missing in the federal administration.
So he plans to conduct his own foreign policy. Evidently, he doesn't know how foreign policy is conducted in the United States. Foreign policy is conducted by the President of the United States, who is the Commander-in-Chief. It's in fact a violation of the Logan Act for anyone but the president to conduct foreign policy. If Mamdani were ever to try such a thing, arrest the Prime Minister of Israel or any foreign leader, he himself would be arrested. Mamdani just became a U.S. citizen in 2018, apparently only because he had decided at that time to run for elected office, to run for the New York State General Assembly. He was born in Uganda, though he's of Indian descent. His parents are originally from India. But Zohran's father was a professor in Uganda at the time Zohran was born. And his father, Professor Mahmood Mamdani, is also an Islamist who supports terrorism. And we'll get into that in a bit. Now, Zohran Mamdani is only 34 years old. He had never held a real job other than being elected to the General Assembly of New York State in 2020. Before that, he tried to make it as a rapper under the stage name of Mr. Cardamom. What kind of a rapper name is that? He recorded this song in 2017. Let's take a listen. And in case you can't make out the lyrics, here they are, quote, "No band, no wall, build it up, we'll make it fall. Me, LAMO, laughing my ass off, Zohran, my love for the Holy Land 5, you better look 'em up." And in the part about 9/11, his song goes, "They hit us on our own soil, but we've been hittin' for years, deservin' every blow from the tears." End quote. What a nice song. What a nice man. And the Holy Land 5 he's referring to in the video, who he sends love to in the video, who he tells us to look 'em up, well, he's talking about 5 Islamic radicals in America who were convicted of running a fake charity called the Holy Land Foundation that was raising and sending money to Hamas, a terrorist organization in Gaza, a terrorist organization in the Middle East. And they were found to have sent at least $12.4 million to Hamas. And the 2 leaders of the Holy Land 5 were sentenced to 65 years in federal prison. The other 3 were sentenced to 15 to 20 years in federal prison. So these are the terrorists that Mamdani sends his love to in that rap song. And by the way, these were all naturalized U.S. citizens, or they were legal U.S. residents. So these are the kinds of people we're letting into America.
So let's explain what the Holy Land Fives are. They are convicted criminals that have been convicted in 2008 for material support for Hamas. In 2001, the Holy Land Foundation was actually dismantled. In 2001, it was shut down. And in 2008, they were convicted. These 5 people were convicted for supporting Hamas. He is saying that he is in love with those people and asking you to look them up. So I say, absolutely look them up. That guy is so radical. He might be some sort of a Trojan horse, not just for Marxism, which is what he is actually saying, but for jihadism. He is supporting the concept of this. He refuses to acknowledge Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. He's very coy about this, right? So when he goes on national television, he goes, well, yes, Israel has the right to exist. But when asked on the debate stage, do you think Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state, he refuses to answer. This is a terrible news, not just for Jews, for every single American and everybody who supports Western values. It's horrible.
And now this self-described communist, this actual supporter and promoter of terrorism, is the mayor of New York City. But why should you care about this unless you actually live in New York City? Well, because this is where the Democrat Party is today. 66% of Democrats now view socialism more favorably than capitalism, according to a Gallup poll. Mamdani's candidacy was also endorsed by leaders of the Democrat Party, including the Democrat governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, and the Democrat leader in the U.S. House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries.
When someone stands up and says, I will lead this city by making it more affordable, and here are my plans, real plans, plans to deliver on childcare, plans to deliver on housing, plans to deliver, we're going to experiment, we're going to try things on groceries. That is the Democratic message.
Early champions of the Mamdani candidacy were the socialist senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, and AOC. And here's one of AOC's unhinged speeches right here, endorsing Mamdani during the campaign.
Black Americans fleeing slavery and Jim Crow, Latinos seeking a better life, Native people standing for themselves, Asian Americans coming together in Queens, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Manhattan, in Staten Island, in this country, in a vision to build the freest, toughest, and greatest city on earth.
The socialists have a lot of energy.
Remember earlier, Tommy, when I was telling you why I see Brandon Johnson and others, they pull those trigger words. They think that they can trigger in people of color fear about voting for anybody else but their party through these words.
Make no mistake, today's Democrat Party is not liberal. It's radical left, even communist. It's actually worse than communist. It's some weird variant of Islamo-communism fused with LGBTQ and transgender ideology, plus hatred of Christianity and hatred of America, hatred of Western civilization. Some call this warped ideology intersectionality. Intersectionality refers to a coalition of interests that hate Christianity and want to destroy Western civilization. Now, these interests, they have their own separate goals and agendas that are often in conflict with each other, but they have a single mission, and that's to destroy Western civilization, destroy America, destroy Christianity. That's why we see Palestinian flags flown at LGBTQ marches. Now, if an LGBTQ or a trans person actually entered Gaza or Iran or Afghanistan under the Taliban, they'd be thrown off a building. They'd be killed. But the LGBTQers and the trans people, they're allies with the radical Islamists in their hatred of America, their hatred of Western civilization, and of Christianity. Here we see during the campaign that Zohran Mamdani spent much of his day, on this particular day, giving Hasan Piker a tour of New York City. Now, Hasan Piker, he's the left's biggest political streamer. He has millions of followers. Hasan Piker also said that America deserved the 9/11 attack.
America deserved 9/11, dude. Fuck it. I'm saying it.
And he's incited his audience to kill Republican U.S. senators.
If you cared about Medicare fraud or Medicaid fraud, you would kill Rick Scott.
He also calls on his millions of followers to kill Republicans in general.
Yeah, kill them. Kill those motherfuckers and murder those motherfuckers in the street. Let the streets soak in their fucking red capitalist bloods, dude. I'm sick and tired of it. Left-wingers, liberals, you need to be fucking showing your opponent's guts on there, okay? You need to be gutting them. You need to be shanking these motherfuckers and letting their intestines just ride on stage. What the fuck is this shit, man? Slice them up. Slice them and fucking dice them. What the fuck is this?
Hasan Piker is also an immigrant from the Middle East. He's an immigrant from Turkey who openly hates America and is openly pro-terrorist. Why hasn't Hasan Piker been arrested for inciting assassination of public officials, for U.S. senators, and inciting violence and inciting and promoting terrorism? Where is FBI Director Kash Patel? Where is U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi on this? What are they doing with their day if they're not arresting Hasan Piker? But Zohran Mamdani spent 3 hours on Hasan Piker's podcast rallying Piker's insane followers to support Zohran's campaign for mayor.
No Salaam. That's perfect. Okay, hold on.
Best friends.
People want to take photos.
Remember the...
Yeah, I do. Friendship ended.
No, we're not doing that.
No, you have to hold hands. You have to hold hands this time.
The friendship ended, you don't remember that?
You guys
Oh, yeah.
For me. I'm going to try this. Okay, ready? Yeah, friendship ended. I think that's the name. Perfect. Okay,
all right. Hasan, you have a third one, or?
I think
Karen... No, sorry, I only have two. I just can't count.
Okay. All right. Thank you. This was amazing. Seriously.
Now, the media told us over and over again that Zohran's mayoral campaign was an organic uprising of the people against capitalism, against Wall Street, against corporatism, and against the political establishment. That's what we were told by the media. But in fact, Mamdani's campaign was not organic at all, wasn't spontaneous at all. It was organized and funded by billionaires George and Alex Soros and their network of nonprofits to the tune of $40 million. I have another deep dive video here on how George and Alex Soros and their network of nonprofits have literally been funding terrorism, not just across the Middle East, but right here on American soil. And this has been well documented in a new report released by, big extensive report released by the Capital Research Center. It's a well-sourced, well-documented report. The Mamdani candidacy was a product of the Soros network of nonprofits and the Soros plan to destroy America. The Mamdani candidacy was not organic or spontaneous at all. In fact, Mamdani has been groomed for politics by the Soros network for more than a decade. We'll get into Soros's role in more detail later in this video. But first, let's get into the Mamdani family history, which is quite interesting and instructive, and helps explain why Zohran Mamdani was the perfect candidate for George and Alex Soros. Zohran's father, Mahmood Mamdani, is a professor at Columbia University, where he specializes in African history, politics, the evils of Western colonialism, and what he calls the politics of knowledge production. In one of his books titled Good Muslim, Bad Muslim, he writes favorably about suicide bombers, saying that suicide bombers should be recognized as a category of soldier, and that it should be understood as a feature of modern political violence, rather than stigmatized as barbarism. Right, he doesn't think suicide bombers should be stigmatized. He sees suicide bombers as honorable warriors against Western colonialism. Professor Mamdani, Mahmood Mamdani, also called America the root of all evil in the world and compared Abraham Lincoln to Adolf Hitler. He even says that Hitler was inspired by the American model.
America is the genesis of what we call settler colonialism. And the American model was exported all around the world. Abraham Lincoln generalized the solution of reservations. They herded American Indians into separate territories. For the Nazis, this was the inspiration. Hitler realized two things. One, that genocide was doable. It is possible to do genocide. That's what Hitler realized. Second thing Hitler realized is that you don't have to have a common citizenship. You can differentiate between people. The Nuremberg laws were patterned after American laws. Anyway, the US put Indians in reservations. The US invented the model.
Now, this is a complete distortion of history. Now, of course, there is much to criticize about our treatment of the Native Americans. But no, we did not commit genocide against the Native Americans. 85 to 90% of the Native American population did die as a result of the diseases that the Europeans brought here. But that wasn't intentional. Genocide has to be intentional. The reservation system was an attempt to allow the Native Americans here to live as they wanted to live, but without disrupting the progress of civilization. And for the most part, white men got along well with the Native Americans. But there were inevitable conflicts, as always happens when the more advanced civilization meets a primitive people. The more advanced civilization pretty much always wins. And for some reason, the left believes that it's realistic for an entire continent, really two continents, North America and South America, to be left unexplored and unsettled by advanced civilizations. The Americas were going to be colonized by someone. The question is who? Who is going to do the colonizing? And in fact, there was a world war for control of this continent, a war between the British Empire, the French Empire, the Spanish Empire, and the Portuguese Empire. Spain pretty much won the war for Latin America, though the Portuguese got Brazil, and the British won the war for North America. The idea that a primitive indigenous people would just be allowed to live here without ever encountering more advanced civilization is just unrealistic. It's absurd. But this is the fantasy land that the left lives in. And the left accuses the West, accuses Europe, of stealing this land from the Indians, from the Native Americans. That's what Mamdani's father is saying. The Native Americans didn't have concepts like private property, rule of law, money, or a financial system. They just lived off the land. So obviously they're going to lose to the more advanced civilization. The question is, lose to who? Would it be the Europeans? Would it be the Chinese? Would it be someone else? The Japanese? This is what always happens when the advanced civilization meets a primitive people. And this has been the pattern for thousands of years. Before the British, Spanish, and French empires, we had the Roman Empire. We've also had many non-Western empires, such as the Persian Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the Mongolian Empire. Remember Attila the Hun? And of course, throughout Latin America, we had the brutal Inca, Aztec, and Mayan empires with their human sacrifices. They were pretty brutal. And of course, just because we're calling them indigenous people doesn't mean that they are just living peaceful, idyllic lives, just roaming the plains peacefully. And this continent was a brutal battleground long before the Europeans arrived. Highly aggressive tribes like the Apache, the Sioux, the Comanche waged brutal wars against each other. And the more brutal tribes tended to win, obviously. Now, Western civilization just happens to be the most humane civilization in the history of the world because it's based on Christianity. Much better to live under Western civilization than the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, or under any so-called indigenous people. And if you disagree, try living with an indigenous people, say in sub-Saharan Africa, and see how that works out for you. Or in the Amazon jungle. See how that goes. Now, this doesn't mean that we haven't engaged in our share of brutality, often necessary brutality. We fought and won 2 world wars. We dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The Dresden fire bombings to finish off Hitler killed more people than our 2 atomic bombs. And here's what President Trump did to these Houthi terrorists, whom Mamdani loves. Mamdani loves terrorists. So Mamdani's father says that Hitler modeled his ideas after America, borrowed his ideas from the American system. And Zohran, he grew up in Uganda where his father was a professor. Zohran's mom is named Mira Nair. She's also radical left, and she's actually a very accomplished Hollywood movie director. She grew up in India at the top of the social and economic hierarchy. She's very wealthy, comes from a wealthy family, comes from the top of India's brutal caste system. Films of hers that you might have heard of include Mississippi Masala, starring Denzel Washington, also Vanity Fair, starring Reese Witherspoon. She also directed a movie about the pioneering female aviator Amelia Earhart, starring Hilary Swank and Richard Gere. But she mostly made independent-style films about India. She won the award for Best Feature Film at the Cannes Film Festival for her movie Salaam Bombay. And she got her degree from Harvard, where she majored in theater and sociology. In her posts on Twitter, she is most politically animated by her virulent anti-Israel views. Here she posts, quote, "I will go to Israel when the walls come down. I will go to Israel when the occupation is gone. I will go to Israel when the state does not privilege one religion over another. I will go to Israel when apartheid is over. I stand with Palestine for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel and the larger BDS movement," end quote. So she does not think that Israel has any right to exist. She also mocked the idea that her son was any kind of an American. In an interview that she did in 2013 with the Hindustan Times, she said, quote, "We're not Farangs at all," end quote. The word Farangs is a slur term aimed at Westerners, aimed at white people. It's kind of like the N-word for black people. So she calls us Farangs. She continued, quote, "He is very much like us. He is not an American at all," end quote. So she describes Zohran as not American at all. She mocks the idea that he's any kind of an American at all. She speaks of America with disgust. Zohran was 21 years old at the time of this interview. He was also a student at a very expensive college called Bowdowin College in Maine, where he founded a chapter of an organization called Students for Justice in Palestine. Now, his mom really doesn't speak much about American politics directly. She expresses her anti-colonialism and her anti-Western views mostly through her films that describe life in India under British colonialism. She generally frames her politics in terms of cultural resistance to the West. And she says that her films are a tool that she uses to, quote, amplify marginalized voices, end quote.
As someone, who represents India internationally, how do you think the last few months have played out for India and its democracy on the world stage?
Well, it's both. It's extraordinary, inspiring in some sense to have the people of India, the students of India, beyond political parties, just rise up and protest the secularism that this country fought for freedom from the British, the secularism that we all are so proud of, that is being damaged. And beyond political parties, people are taking to the streets and demanding to be heard on this. So that's inspiring. And what do you expect a citizen to do when faced with laws that are essentially unjust? Really what is being threatened? And I am extraordinarily charged by the people and the students who are just not taking this and who are going out into the streets peacefully, mostly very peacefully.
And she met her husband, her second husband, Zohran's father, Mahmood Mamdani, in Uganda when she was working on a movie called Mississippi Masala that was starring Denzel Washington. So it was a pretty big film. This movie is about a romance between an Indian-Ugandan woman, who sounds a lot like Zohran's mom here, and a black American man in Mississippi.
Young lady, tell me, how come they got Indians in Africa?
The British brought them there to build a railway?
Like slaves?
I guess. That's how my grandfather came. Then the railway was finished and he stayed on.
How come you left?
Dexter, let her eat her food, huh?
Just asking a question.
In this movie, it's actually a pretty good movie, but it's essentially about how racist America is, especially about how racist the American South is. But she is a highly skilled filmmaker. And even though she's radical left, she's smart enough not to beat her audience over the head with sermons about politics. She's a very good storyteller and filmmaker. She makes her political point through the stories that she tells and through the images that she shows in her films. Zohran's father, on the other hand, is much more of a hater than she is. So Zohran got his political views mostly from his parents, who were very wealthy and who were allowed into America to spread their hatred of the West and their hatred for America. Zohran's father does this at Columbia University as a professor of African Studies, also through his books. And in one of his books, this book, Good Muslim, Bad Muslim, well, that book is essentially about how America deserved the 9/11 attack. That's what that book is about. And one of his other books, titled Neither Settler Nor Native, well, this book makes the case for violence against Western targets. That's what that book is about. So Zohran's parents are not stupid people. They're highly intelligent. So is he. Now, it's actually unclear whether his parents ever did become U.S. citizens. At least I can't find whether or not they did from the public record. I assume they did because they've lived here so long and they've built careers here, but maybe not. Zohran, after all, waited until 2018 to become a U.S. citizen. It seems he decided to do that when he decided to run for elected office, run for the New York State General Assembly. Zohran constantly says he's a proud Muslim. He attends mosques regularly, including Friday prayers, but he doesn't seem to be especially religious. Similar to his Muslim father, he's animated much more by his radical left politics than by faith in God. Unlike true Muslims, he aligns himself with the radical LGBTQ cause, including promoting taxpayer funding for transgender surgeries, also legalized prostitution, legalized drug use, abortion on demand up until the moment of birth. All these positions are anathema to the true Islamic religion. It seems that Zohran primarily gets his political views from his father and his presentation skills from his mom. He's a pretty good presenter when he wants to be friendly. He wasn't very friendly in his victory speech, but he was friendly on the campaign trail. He's a pretty good propagandist. I think that Zohran is actually a much more formidable politician than AOC. For one thing, he's very intelligent and he's well-spoken. And he very intelligently focuses his campaign message on the unaffordability of living in New York City. Obviously, everybody agrees with that. It's very expensive to live in New York City, especially Manhattan. But it's always been that way. That's because Manhattan is on an island. It's also the financial center of the world. And because it's on a tiny little island, there's a finite amount of land. So it's always going to be expensive to live in Manhattan. Most people, of course, are not economists, so don't understand that Zohran's proposed solutions will actually make conditions much worse in New York City, and much more expensive ultimately. For example, Zohran says he wants to freeze rents. He also wants to harass landlords.
We freeze the rent!
Freeze the rent! Freeze the rent!
But if he does that, it becomes unaffordable for landlords to rent out their units because property taxes keep increasing, maintenance costs keep increasing, costs keep going up. So landlords will then have no choice but to let their rental units fall into disrepair. It then will make no sense for property developers to build more housing if they can't make money. So then the housing shortage gets worse and worse. Ultimately, the freeze on rents will be lifted because it will just become untenable to be a landlord or a property developer in New York City. When that happens, rents will skyrocket even more because of the even worse housing shortage created by the freeze on rents. Rent freezes and rent control have been tried many times in the past. It always fails. It never works. It always produces the same result. First there's a housing shortage, then skyrocketing rents once the rent control is lifted, once the rent freeze is lifted. By contrast, what the free market does is always optimizes supply and prices. The free market always produces the best result, the best overall result, by maximizing supply, which then drives prices down. So long as profitable, even a little bit profitable, more of the good or the service will be produced until it's no longer profitable to produce more. That's why capitalism produces goods and services at the lowest possible price that's economically feasible. Capitalism always produces surpluses and abundance, whereas socialism always delivers shortages and poverty. But of course, those who are completely economically illiterate think Zohran Mamdani's prescriptions sound just awesome. He'll just give us a lot of free stuff, right? Just pass laws mandating lower prices. The problem with that is it becomes unprofitable to produce anything, so nothing is produced. Then everybody starves and is homeless. That's how socialism works. Free market capitalism is the greatest system ever devised that creates prosperity and lifts people out of poverty. Socialism has created nothing but misery wherever it's been tried. So the Mamdani family arrived in America from Uganda in 1999. Now they want to turn America into Uganda. That's the big problem with our immigration system. Now, I am very pro-immigrant. I'm very pro-legal immigration. We need immigration. We need legal immigration. And the reason that we need legal immigration is that the fertility rate among the native population is far below the population replacement rate. And our entire economy is built on a growing population because our economy is built on debt, especially the Social Security system, but other aspects of the economy also. But the Social Security system depends on an ever-increasing workforce paying into the system. It's basically a Ponzi scheme. But without an increasing number of workers paying into the system, the whole system collapses. And in fact, the entire economy collapses because we have a $38 trillion national debt. If we don't have more and more workers paying taxes, the whole economic system implodes like a house of cards. But we need to be very careful who we let into America. We only want immigrants who love America, who truly want to assimilate and become part of America. We certainly don't want to let immigrants into America who want to transform America into the kind of third world hellhole they came from. Now, the truth is, the Mamdanis, at least on paper, seem like the kind of immigrants that we should want. They arrived in America with a lot of wealth, they're highly educated, they're successful. So it's quite possible that even my filter, my screen, would have allowed the Mamdanis into the country, because on paper they seem pretty good, until you start reading the writings of Professor Mahmood Mamdani. The problem, of course, is that we've allowed tens of millions of immigrants into America who have no affinity for America, nothing in common with America, no love for America, no loyalty to America. Millions, tens of millions of migrants are just here for the free welfare, the free health care, the free housing, free education, the $1,600 loaded onto their debit cards every month. All that is a magnet for immigrants to just pour in here from all over the world. That's what was happening under the Biden regime. They were literally paying tens of millions of migrants to pour in here. But that doesn't describe the Mamdanis. They arrived wealthy and highly educated. On paper, they fit the criteria of the perfect immigrant family. But the problem with the Mamdanis is that they hate America. We should have read Professor Mahmood Mamdani's books before we let him in. Now, if his books were about how great America is and why Uganda and India needed to adopt free market capitalism and the rule of law as systems for them, then I would say by all means let him in. But instead his books are all about how America and the West are the source of all evil in the world. He defends suicide bombers as honorable warriors against the West, against us. So his writing should have been a gigantic disqualifying red flag. No thanks to the Mamdanis. We want immigrants who will be productive, but who are also pro-America, who love America, and who want to be part of America as it is, not transform America into some sort of third world hellhole from which they came. So Zohran arrived with his parents at the age of 7 in 1999 from Uganda, and while growing up, because they were a rich family, Zohran attended an elite private school that cost $68,000 a year to attend. He closed out his high school career by graduating from the elite Bronx High School of Science, which boasts the most Nobel Prize winners of any high school in America. Zohran then went on to attend Bowdowin College in Maine, an exorbitantly expensive private liberal arts school that cost $90,000 per year to attend, which is $360,000 that you'll have to pay for a degree if you want to go to Bowdowin College. And Mamdani, at Bowdowin College, majored in African studies. They actually call it Africana studies at Bowdowin. So imagine paying $360,000 plus 4 years of your life to get a bachelor's degree in African studies. Africana studies. That's what Zohran did. And his special area of focus was slavery in America. So his emphasis of study was on the worst aspects of America. And plus, let's not forget, he founded a campus chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine, this radical left Islamic group. So he had these radical left parents who literally built their careers, well, especially the father, on hating America. And we let these people in here as immigrants. And now he's the mayor of New York City. In addition to freezing rents and harassing and torturing landlords so they no longer want to stay in the city and rent out their units and maintain their properties, Zohran also wants to set up government-run grocery stores because private grocery stores have shut down or left poor neighborhoods due to all the crime.
The cost of this is $60 million to set up one store in each borough.
Does the city need to spend $60 million on 5 grocery stores? I don't know.
The problem with this is that the Soviet Union tried that. The government was unable to keep food on the shelves. People had to wait online for hours and hours and walk for miles and miles to get a loaf of bread. So that didn't work.
The cost of this is $60 million to set up one store in each borough. Now, that should be compared to the city's existing program, where they're set to spend $140 million subsidizing corporate grocery stores. So we would take less than half of the money the city's already set to spend and actually deliver results.
But $140 million is what private supermarkets spend, not the government. Mamdani just misread something on a city website.
He made just a basic math error.
The city owns the Linwood Shopping Center. A nonprofit operates the grocery store.
It's clear this Sunfresh at 31st and Prospect is struggling. This is the first section people see when they come in. There's barely any produce.
A lot of the coolers and shelves around the store look the same way, empty.
So shoppers have been asking us, if the store isn't closing, then where's all the food?
A rotten smell comes through the door, and anywhere you turn, you'll see products that need to be restocked. No hot food or deli.
I watch people walk in and walk out.
The easier solution is just to put more police on the street and enforce the law. High crime, after all, is the biggest tax there is on poor people, because the stores all shut down in their neighborhoods because of the crime. So what Zohran says he's going to do is put Stalin-era type grocery stores, government-run grocery stores, in low-income areas that will sell cheap food.
I'm Zohran Mamdani, and as mayor, I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores. It's like a public option for produce. We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores, whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging. These stores will operate without a profit motive or having to pay property taxes or rent, and will pass on those savings to you.
No profit motive. That appeals to people. But the profit motive is exactly what keeps stores stocked. We have choices because capitalists must compete to get your dollars. Compare your experience at your profit-seeking grocery store to
Dysfunction at the DMV.
government services bring tedious bureaucracy.
People say hours-long waits have been greeting them at the doors.
I don't want my grocery store run like that.
Just put more cops on the street, enforce the law, and grocery stores are going to magically appear on their own. But Zohran, he actually wants to go in the opposite direction. He hates the police, and he wants to decriminalize petty crimes like shoplifting, prostitution, drug use, and subway fare jumping. So that just incentivizes more crime. And if you legalize prostitution, as he proposes to do, well, this incentivizes more human trafficking, including involving minors. But his view is that shoplifting is just reparations paid by white people to black and brown people. The problem is that the owners of these stores in these poor neighborhoods are mostly black and brown people. And Mamdani has said over and over again how much he despises the police and wants to defund the police. Here he tells us, quote, "We don't need an investigation to know that the NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. What we need is to defund the NYPD. No fake cuts. Defund the police," end quote. Here he tells us that policing doesn't create safety, and he wants to cut $1 billion from the NYPD and spend that money on social services.
The demand of $1 billion is not because that is the amount of money that will solve everything. It comes out of an understanding that policing is something that does not create safety. And what we need to do is reinvest into things that are proven indicators and creators of safety. And the city council budget did not do that. And it's just mind-blowing. They cut 1 out of 4 cadet classes next year. The headcount of the police department will go up next year. How we can call this a serious cut to the police is beyond me.
And here's where intersectionality comes in. Tell me how insane this is. Quote, "Queer liberation means defunding the police," end quote. And here he tells us in this post, quote, "We need a socialist city council to defund the police," end quote.
Are you for defunding the police? Are you for a serious reform that people can see on the ground?
I am in favor of defunding the police. And I think that what we need to do is not chip away $1 million or $5 million. I think in this first year, we need to take $1 billion out of that budget. And I think that we need to reinvest that money into social services.
He also says he wants to remove the police from the schools.
We need to defund these institutions
And I say that as somebody who has grown up in this city, who has seen what these cops can do, and who has seen the ways in which that police have been integrated into every part of our lives, that we had them in our high schools, that we had them in our middle schools. We do not need police to be in these places. They do not create safety. We need to take this money, defund the NYPD, and refund the people.
His hatred of the police is so extreme that he actually mocks a description of a weeping police officer. A poster on X named Mikey writes, quote, "I just saw a cop crying in his car. LMAO," end quote. LAMO meaning laughing my ass off. And Mamdani responds, he says, "Nature is healing." How twisted is that? Of course, he has no idea why this police officer might be crying over a murder victim or perhaps the death of a friend or family member. Mamdani doesn't know. He just thinks it's fantastic that this police officer is weeping for whatever reason. Isn't it interesting how the left always claims to be the compassionate ones, the ones with so much empathy? But the hardcore leftist has no sympathy, no compassion, no empathy whatsoever. All that matters to them is the political objective. So that's how dark this man's heart is. He mocks the crying police officer, not even knowing what he's crying about, or she. And here he tells us that violent crime, well, it's just an artificial construction.
Oftentimes, we've even found as legislators, when we go into these courts, the term violent crime is even used when people are stealing packages. Violent crime is even used when people are accused of burglary and there happens to be a housing unit in that same dwelling. So violence is an artificial construction.
Really? Tell the victims of violent crime that it's just an artificial construction.
Blood now being washed away from the sidewalk here at East 188th Street, where police say shots rang out just last night before 7 o'clock, killing 57-year-old Kevin Jennings and sending a woman to the hospital.
Shot in the head and killed right near a police station house.
Chaos broke out inside a deli in the Bronx last night, killing an innocent man.
Yeah, workers tell us the victim was inside buying a bag of chips when gunfire broke out and bullets started to fly. And now police are looking for the gunman who pulled the trigger.
So violence is an artificial construction.
This is clearly not somebody who's lived in a dangerous neighborhood because he gets all the security he needs. He's from a wealthy family. He's never lived in a dangerous neighborhood. He has security. He has police.
Zohran, how is it different? That's a fair question, Zohran. Let go of the door.
Fucking right.
Wait, I thought he was against the police, bro. Wow, your security just used force against me, Zohran.
But he doesn't want police for the general population. His plan is just to let dangerous career criminals roam the streets of New York City. And here we have Mamdani just screaming at this police officer who is preventing Mamdani from storming the podium, where President Trump's border security chief, Tom Homan, is giving a briefing. And very oddly, Zohran tries to link his hatred of the police with his hatred of the Israeli Defense Forces, or the IDF, even though there is no link.
We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF.
What he's doing here by linking the NYPD, the New York City Police, to the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF, is reminding his Islamic support base that he hates Israel and hates Jewish people. And by the way, a third of Jewish voters in New York City voted for this guy. Here are some more policy ideas from Zohran. He says he wants the minimum wage to be $30 an hour. So what do you think this will do to the cost of your coffee at 7-Eleven or your bag of groceries if this $30 an hour has to be built into the cost? So even a beginner, some young kid who has no work experience, is going to be paid $30 an hour? How's that going to work out? And how will small businesses even stay in business?
$30 minimum wage. Can you explain how that might affect businesses?
We're going to hell. It's over.
How are they going to make payroll? It's just about all the policy that he's trying to do, increasing the workers and the taxes. It's not good.
The minimum wage doesn't help the worker. It just helps the system. Pay more money, more taxes, prices go up.
Overnight, half of them will go out of business.
Any thoughts on having him for 4 years?
What I can do is just swallow and try to face it, but it's not easy. We're cooked. We're on the way to becoming a communist state.
The city's in trouble. They're in trouble.
Good luck.
And actually, California tried this. When California raised the minimum wage to $20 per hour, California lost 18,000 fast food jobs. Meanwhile, fast food jobs increased in other states. And of course, increasing the minimum wage to such exorbitant heights just accelerates the transition from human workers to machine workers, to robots.
Flippy can cook everything from French fries and onion rings to cheese sticks. White Castle said it plans to add 100 Flippies to its kitchens nationwide.
He also wants to make buses free. He says faster and free.
We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line and make what are currently the slowest buses in the nation move around this city with ease.
Again, sort of sounds nice at first hearing. But what this actually means is that homeless people will be using the buses for homes. They'll be riding the buses for free all day and all night. The buses will become traveling homes for the homeless. And the buses will become unusable for normal people. And if the buses are free, well, the subways have to be free too, right? And he says he's going to decriminalize the fare jumping in subways anyway.
Transit workers are sounding the alarm on rampant drug use in Seattle, saying some of the vehicles smell like toxic fentanyl and meth, and that smoke is scaring off travelers. Seattle radio show host Jason Rantz does not own a car. He takes public transportation. And you've seen this with your own two eyes. People are smoking meth on the trains and in the buses.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal. Well, you're sitting there on your way to the office, and then all of a sudden you're like, what is that weird smell? And you turn to see some homeless people who are smoking meth together in the back of the bus. And part of the reason we're seeing this is that it's almost by design, I would argue. You've got homeless people who are allowed to ride the bus for free. There's no fare enforcement because fare enforcement, according to the county, is racist. Right. Don't get into it. It's ridiculous. But unfortunately, that means they kind of run things the way that they want. They have carte blanche over the bus system. And even before you get onto the bus, good luck finding one of the bus routes that isn't just occupied by a whole bunch of homeless people.
Also, Mamdani thinks that the homeless should be allowed to sleep on the subways. So the entire city is just going to become a hellhole. He also says he wants to provide universal daycare, childcare, at a cost of $5 billion a year.
And we are going to create universal childcare at no cost to parents. So New Yorkers can raise their family in the city they love.
He says he wants to do this so that parents in New York can afford to raise their children. But they aren't really raising their children. The parents of New York City won't be really raising their children if they're just dropping their toddlers off at childcare. Somebody else is going to be raising their kids. And that somebody's going to be indoctrinating them into LGBTQ ideology and so forth. And every study I've seen shows that kids who are dropped off every day, toddlers who are dropped off every day at childcare have much less success in life than kids who have a stay-at-home mom. Toddlers who are raised in childcare centers enter school with worse social skills and have all kinds of problems.
A childcare worker with one of the country's largest providers has been convicted of assault after being filmed slapping a crying baby and laughing.
But that's the left's model.
$5-6 billion is the cost of universal childcare. When they implemented it in Quebec, it had a 10-to-1 return because there were so many more single mothers and mothers of young children who were now entering into the workforce.
Both mom and dad will be workers for the system, and their children will be raised by the state. This is why the left has made such a concerted effort over the last half-century to get control of education in America. This is right out of the communist playbook.
So we had to be indoctrinated and chanting slogans and holding Chairman Mao's little red books to say, "Long live Chairman Mao, long live Communist Party."
Mao's soldiers were not enlisted from his military. His Red Guards were made up of high school and university students.
So he used young people to start cultural revolution, to top down statues, burning old buildings, and demonize all religions, going after all dissident voices.
The totalitarian knows that the brainwashing has to begin as young as possible. Kindergarten is okay, but it's better if the brainwashing starts younger. The left wants to get a hold of your child's brain before he or she can even walk or talk. That's why the left has been pushing so hard for universal childcare. They, of course, frame it as a free service, as a benefit, but what you're doing is turning the raising of your child over to the government, over to the left. Zohran also says that he wants to build 200,000 low-income housing units in New York City at an estimated cost of $100 billion.
And use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it.
So how does Zohran plan to pay for all this? Universal childcare, 200,000 units of low-income housing, free bus rides. Well, one way, he says, is to increase taxes on white people. Here's what his platform on his website says. It says he wants to, quote, shift the tax burden to whiter neighborhoods. And Mamdani certainly doesn't hide his hatred for white people.
Because my mother made a film called Mississippi Masala and met my father in the process of it. And at the time, she was looking for funding for that film, and she told the story. It was about a love story between an African-American man and an Indian-Ugandan woman. And she went up to a financier, and he said, where are the white actors in this story? And she said, don't worry, they'll be the waiters.
Now, nothing wrong with being a waiter. I was a waiter in my younger days. But it's kind of an odd thing to highlight. Why only have white people play waiters? What point are the Mamdanis making here?
And she went up to a financier, and he said, where are the white actors in this story? And she said, don't worry, they'll be the waiters.
Seems like they're doing two things. They're expressing their elite disdain for waiters, and they're also expressing their hatred for white people. That's how I read this. In another post, I think he's talking about the Oscars here, he says, quote, I'm willing to bet that winners of Best Actor, Actress, Supporting Actor, Supporting Actress, Director, and Cinematographer are all white, end quote. Well, I don't think that's been the case at all. And here's another post where Mamdani makes clear his disdain for both white people and capitalism. They're linked, he says. He writes, quote, the invisible hand of the market, my ass. That hand is white and wearing a ring with a conflict diamond in it. A conflict diamond is a blood diamond. It's a diamond mined with slave labor. So this is his way of saying that America's wealth was created with slave labor. He says this even though less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves at the height of slavery in the colonies. He says this even though 600,000 Americans died in a civil war to end slavery, slavery that only existed in the Confederate States at that time. But the left never gives America any credit for that. And never mind that slavery was the norm in the 18th and 19th centuries, had been the norm for thousands of years. It was America and the British who formally ended slavery in the 19th century. And never mind that African slaves were bought from African slave traders, and that slavery is still practiced in Africa and much of the world today. But in the Mamdani narrative, America is the root of all evil in the world. And never mind that slavery was ended by the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, whom Mamdani's father, Professor Mahmood Mamdani, compared to Adolf Hitler. Yeah, Abraham Lincoln is comparable to Adolf Hitler in the twisted mind of Mahmood Mamdani, who is a professor of African studies at Columbia University. And here's a post where Zohran Mamdani ties it all together, his hatred of whites, the police, and the Jews. He writes, quote, white supremacy has many faces, from the police and prison systems in America to occupation and apartheid in Palestine. He posted this on August 6, 2020. And of course he says over and over again that he will do everything in his power to prevent the Trump administration from rounding up and deporting dangerous criminal illegal aliens.
But if you want to pursue your promise to create the single largest deportation force in American history, then you will have to get through me to do that here in New York City.
Mr. President, your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zohran Mamdani, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zohran Mamdani?
Well, then we'll have to arrest him.
Zohran always pledges to put criminal gangs ahead of the safety of the New York people. But New Yorkers voted for this, so I guess it's a FAFO situation. It's kind of an F around and find out situation. And here, Mamdani states his agenda plainly in one sentence. Quote, today we can tax the rich, heal the sick, house the poor, defund the police, and build a socialist New York. Well, let's see how that works out. Now, how does Mamdani propose to pay for all this? For universal childcare, 200,000 housing units for low-income folks, free public transportation, taxpayer funding for transgender procedures for whoever wants them, plus more aggressively woke indoctrination of the kids in the schools. Well, as mentioned, he plans to tax white people more aggressively. He also proposes to increase the top income and corporate tax rates by 70%. But all this will accomplish is cause even more businesses and high-income people to leave the city. Why would anyone stay in New York City if you can move to Florida or Texas or a number of Republican-controlled states and pay no personal income tax? And businesses can move to Texas and pay no corporate tax. 1/3 of New York State's budget is supplied by the top 1% of income earners. And this is a highly mobile group. Imagine if this top 1% all just left for Florida or Texas or wherever. That's what happens when socialism meets reality. The real problem comes when the entire country adopts this agenda. Then it'll become much more difficult to flee. And of course, that's the plan. Mamdani was a great salesman during the campaign. He's always smiling and sounding so friendly. This is why he was the perfect Trojan horse candidate, the perfect wolf in sheep's clothing for George and Alex Soros. Everything will be free. That's always the siren song of the communist. Housing will be free. Public transportation will be free. Food will be free. You'll have free healthcare, free childcare. But of course, nothing is free. Somebody has to pay for all of this. And then we have to ask, what ends up being the quality of this so-called free service or free product that is being provided by communism? Now, North Korea is the most communist country in the world right now. And North Korea provides universal health care, free medical care for everyone. But the problem in North Korea is that you have to perform your own amputations without anesthesia. So yeah, the medical care is free for everyone in North Korea. But this is probably not the kind of health care you would want. Now let's talk about how the Mamdani candidacy was not the least bit organic or spontaneous. He was a creation of the Soros anti-America industrial complex. As I cover in another video, it's my theory that George Soros is not especially ideological. The destruction of countries has been his business model. The way he made his billions of dollars is to create chaos in small countries and then to bet against their currencies, to short their currencies. For example, if you knew in advance how and when the 9/11 attack was going to happen, you could make a lot of money by shorting the U.S. stock market. Now, I'm not saying that Soros did that, not saying that at all. I'm just using that as a dramatic example to show how this can work. George Soros is 93 years old now, so most of his work is being carried out by his son, Alex Soros. And the political work is mostly being carried out through Soros's Open Society Foundation, or I should say foundations, and network of nonprofit organizations. These Soros nonprofit organizations fund a vast network of radical left nonprofits that engage in actual terrorism, not only in the Middle East, but right here in the United States. This is according to a big new report released by the Capital Research Center, and I cover that in this video here. Vast sums of money were also funneled into the Soros network of nonprofits by the Biden regime. So your tax money was, and probably still is, being used to fund radical left political activity and even outright terrorism right here in the United States. Hopefully, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel are getting to the bottom of all this. But now we have another report. This report from whitecollarfraud.com. This report was covered in the Daily Mail. And according to this report by whitecollarfraud.com, Zohran Mamdani's campaign for mayor was fueled by tens of millions of dollars in donations funneled from George Soros-linked nonprofits. And according to this report by Sam Antar, who is a forensic accountant, 6 nonprofit organizations received more than $40 million from Soros charities and then promptly endorsed Mamdani at the same time and deployed field operations to support his campaign. For example, knocking on more than 400,000 doors across New York City and assembling a vast army of grassroots activists. And this allowed Mamdani to seemingly come out of nowhere and defeat former Governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democrat primary for mayor. Mamdani's political ascent was the product of deliberate design and sophisticated collaboration by all the Soros-funded nonprofit entities and intersectionalist interests. Mamdani became part of this in 2012 when, as a student at Bowdowin College in Maine, he formed that chapter of Students for Justice for Palestine. And he was known on campus for his rabid anti-Israel activism. He then fell into the mentorship of Linda Sarsour, a radical anti-Israel Palestinian activist. You might remember her from the 2017 Women's March. Here's a bit of what she's like.
The very things that you were outraged by during this election season, the Muslim registry programs, the the banning of the Muslims, the dehumanization of the communities that I come from. That has been our reality for the past 15 years. You can count on me, your Palestinian Muslim sister, to keep her voice loud, keep her feet on the streets, keep my head held high, because I am not afraid. Sisters and brothers, fear is a choice. We are the majority. We know where we need to go, and we know where justice is.
And she became the face of the anti-Trump resistance for a while. She's an open apologist for ISIS, for radical Islamic terrorism, and a promoter of Sharia law. She wants to impose Sharia law here in the United States, even though she wouldn't be allowed to speak like this in Sharia law Muslim countries. She even attacks Muslim women who expose the brutal reality of how women are treated in Sharia law Muslim countries. She urges that Sharia law be enforced on these women. She says, quote, "take their vaginas away," end quote. I don't know what that even means, but she said it. For her, the goal is not wokeness, it's destruction of Western civilization, Judeo-Christianity, and America. And here's the creation of the Soroses, this Linda Sarsour person, admitting and really boasting that Mamdani's rise was not spontaneous or organic at all.
Right now, I'm a little more quiet because I'm on the quiet side of this race, but I'm going to tell you that once November 4th comes around, I will tell the story. The story is not just, that it's random that Zohran ascended to this place. It is our Muslim American communities. And I'll also say that it's Muslim money. The PACs that have supported Zohran, or a particular PAC that has supported Zohran, is probably over 80% of Muslim American donors in this country. High net donors, grassroots donors. And I want to make the point that the Unity and Justice Fund PAC, which is the CAIR Super PAC, was the largest institutional donor to the pro-Zohran PAC in New York.
He was a creation. Mamdani was a creation of the Soroses. He was also secretly backed by America's most powerful Islamist lobby, the Soros-backed Council on Islamic Relations, which is a very radical organization, supports jihad and holy war against the West, supports terrorism. For example, here's the radical Islamo-communist Congresswoman Ilhan Omar delivering a speech before the Council on American-Islamic Relations, where she downplays and really mocks the 9/11 attack on America.
CAIR was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
And she gets big applause for this. Zohran formally entered Sarsour's orbit in 2018 through the Muslim Democratic Club of New York, an organization that she co-founded to mobilize Muslim and radical left power across New York City. And Zohran joined the board of this organization in 2018. And this gave Zohran access to voter lists, donor networks, and organizing power to fuel his political campaigns. And around that time, Sarsour formed another nonprofit called Empower, meaning Muslim Power, which took in at least $2.4 million from Soros nonprofit networks. And this Empower, Muslim Power, would become a key organizing hub for both Sarsour and Mamdani. And another organization was formed called Engage Action that would also receive a share of the $42.5 million from the Soros foundations and nonprofits. It received about $3 million from the Soros network. These organizations mobilized Muslims and leftists in New York City for Mamdani's campaign. There are now more than 1 million Muslim voters living in New York City, and nearly 100% of them voted for Mamdani, and they turned out in droves. The Mamdani candidacy was also helped dramatically by winning 84% of the under age 30 female vote. And here were some of the reactions to the Mamdani victory.
Sharia law starts now. Absolutely. Zohran Mamdani, Islamic Caliphate, our brother in Islam, Islamic Caliphate of New York, starts today, baby.
These idiots have no idea what Islamic Sharia law even is. In Iran, if a woman is even accused of committing adultery, she can be stoned to death. In Iran, if women go out in public without the proper covering, they're arrested and imprisoned. Under the Taliban in Afghanistan, females are not permitted to be educated beyond the primary school level. Women are also not allowed to go out in public in Iran without being escorted by a male guardian, such as their father or husband. And marriages are arranged by force in Islamic Sharia law countries. These dopey females have no clue what's in store for them if Sharia law, if Islamic Sharia law were ever to go into effect in America.
Sharia law starts now. Absolutely. Zohran Mamdani, Islamic Caliphate, our brother in Islam, Islamic Caliphate of New York starts today, baby.
If that were ever to actually happen here, there'd be no more abortions, no gay marriage, no LGBTQ pride parades, and certainly no transgendered people walking around making a spectacle of themselves. Gay and trans people would be rounded up, imprisoned, probably executed. And these dopey females certainly wouldn't be drunk in bars like this. Instead, they would have to dress like this. But this is who decides elections in America today. And here's one of Mamdani's interns explaining that Mamdani's election is part of Islam's jihadist holy war to destroy the West.
And the true believer knows that none of this is in vain, that this is all jihad, that this is all ibadah, and that this is all counted for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm gonna do what I gotta do, because it's about time to do that. And I know everybody has their own families and has an education and everything. It's just a question. We don't want to get doxxed, and we don't want to get suspended, and we don't want to get arrested. How gangsta are you? That's just my question. How much are you willing to do it? And I know everyone has their own risk levels, but at the end of the day, that's a question to ask ourselves. How committed am I to this? To what extent of my personal material gains am I willing to sacrifice for this bigger noble cause? And subhanAllah, I truly believe that when your heart is in the right place, if you get suspended, if you get doxxed, because it's bound to happen when you're doing a righteous cause and when you're doing something for the sake of Allah here in the West, it will never ever be in vain. And the true believer does not fear that, because the true believer knows that the akhirah is a promise.
Her name is Hadika Arzu Malik. So she says, quote, "This is all jihad, this is all ibadah, this is all counted by Allah. How committed am I to this? What am I willing to sacrifice for this bigger, noble cause? How gangster are you?" she asks. And she was Mamdani's intern on the campaign, so she certainly knows what his campaign is all about. So this mayoral's race in New York City was a key front in the Islamist jihad holy war against America, the holy war to take down the West. And by the way, these jihadists who are here in America are having babies at a much higher rate than the rest of the American population. The rest of the American people are not even having babies at the population replacement rate. So it seems that America's conquest by Islamic jihad is inevitable, by birth rates alone. The Soroses have assembled a political machine that can do this pretty much in any city, any Democrat-run area. The formula is to support the most radical left Democrat in the primary. Then that Democrat wins the nomination, and at least in Democrat areas or in Democrat-friendly areas, goes on to win the general election. That's the formula. And they can do that anywhere that leans Democrat. The Soroses did this in Chicago, which elected an absolute lunatic for mayor named Brandon Johnson. He has an approval rating of like 6% right now. Crime is rampant in Chicago. In Los Angeles, we have an actual communist as the mayor named Karen Bass. In Boston, the mayor is a radical left lunatic named Michelle Wu, who boasted about holding a taxpayer-funded Christmas party where whites were not welcome, whites were specifically not invited, whites were explicitly told not to come on the announcement. That's how insane and racist Michelle Wu is. All these and many others are Soros-engineered mayors. They're products of the Soros network. And Soros money is a big reason why today's Democrat Party has careened so radical left. And even Democrats who privately might not be this radical will go along with it. They're not going to push back against the Soroses. And of course, most Democrat strongholds in America are now sanctuary cities and states, which means that they protect illegal migrants, which Democrats see as millions of future voters, maybe current voters, for socialism and for Democrats.
If the hundreds of billions of dollars to create a financial incentive to have this giant magnet to attract illegals from every part of Earth to these states. If that is turned off, the illegals will leave because they're no longer being paid to come to the United States and stay here.
Wow.
And then they will lose a lot of voters. The Democratic Party will lose a lot of voters. In a nutshell, the Democratic Party wants to destroy democracy by importing voters, and the Republican Party disagrees with that.
And the ruse is that if you don't accept what they're doing, then you're a threat to democracy.
Yes.
As they try to destroy democracy.
Yes.
By importing voters.
That is
and
literally what they're doing.
People to only vote for them, and overwhelming the system.
Yes. And by the way, it's a strategy that, if allowed to work, would work. And in fact, has worked. California is supermajority Democrat.
And the reason that you should be concerned about Mamdani winning the mayorship of New York City, America's largest city, is that it's a demonstration that an outright communist can win the mayorship of just about any city in America, and can win statewide in many states, including in America's biggest states. It's then not a big leap for one of these communists to win the Democrat nomination for president, and then to perhaps win the presidency of the United States. It then becomes 50-50 at that point whether America becomes a communist country. So then the question is, why do Americans keep voting for these people? Well, because most Americans really have no idea what they're voting for. And to show the mindset of the typical voter, typical Democrat voter, here's a clip from a guy named Zach Sage, who explains why people keep voting the way they do.
Can I get your signature for support? Sure. Okay, wait, I'm required by law. I just have to read you like 3 of these policies. You're cool to elect a mayor who won't condemn Sharia law? Yep.
I'm asking you. I'm running.
Okay, cool.
I don't know about that. But
Oh, you don't?
Well, what is this?
It's just like a lot of his policy positions and stuff. You have to recognize the DSA's Bill of Rights socialism, so he'd replace the Bill of Rights with... You can read all this. This is out there. You still want to do it or no? Oh, he's going to tax white people higher? It's on his website first.
I just don't think that this is exactly his policies.
You can look all of it up. No, this is literally the first thing on his website about taxing whiter neighborhoods.
This is true.
No, it literally says
It
whiter
does.
neighborhoods.
Oh my God.
It does.
I don't know what's going on.
And this is the result of America's education system. An education system that is literally designed to keep people stupid. Our schools are producing people who can't think, don't even know the basics, who don't even know what's going on. But they vote, and each one of their votes counts just as much as your vote. Think about that. So that's basically what's happening. Polls even showed that most New Yorkers opposed Mamdani's policies, but they voted for him anyway. And the entire Democrat Party has moved in the direction of Mamdani and AOC, and toward radicalism. So here's the bottom line. If Democrats win the presidency, this likely becomes the last real election in America. They will immediately grant statehood to Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. That will give Democrats 4 more U.S. senators. They will expand the Supreme Court probably to 15 seats or something like that, so they can immediately pack the court with a majority of radicals. They'll completely reopen the border the way it was under the Biden regime. Tens of millions of migrants will just pour in, and soon they'll be voting. At that point, America is over, and America becomes a permanent one-party totalitarian country. A Republican will never be able to win the presidency again. Won't have a chance. So that's what's happening. Be sure to follow me on X. I link to my X account below. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, hit the notifications button. That's how we overcome suppression by the algorithm, because the suppression is real. Also, check out my books on Amazon. They're available in all the formats, also linked to below. One is Bitcoin, a beginner's guide. Bitcoin is free to money because it's unconfiscatable money if you self-custody your Bitcoin. There'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. Bitcoin removes humans from the governance of the money. Bitcoin is the Second Amendment for your money. Bitcoin separates money from state. Bitcoin is what you need, especially if the Democrats win the presidency again. The second book is Win Life, Success Skills Schools Don't Teach. This book is aimed primarily at young people who are just getting launched in adulthood, but will help anyone who wants to be in the top 1% of income earners. Or maybe you have more modest goals. Maybe you just want to lose 20 pounds. This book will help you do that as well. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for listening. Hope to see you back here next time.